Okay. Okay. Are you ready? Because this is Pointless Witticisms, and this is the start of the side of Hellraiser films that not too many people think are too cool. See, here's the thing, listeners. Some fans will say that everything was downhill after the first Hellraiser. Some fans will say that it was all downhill after the second Hellraiser. Some fans will say that Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth was possibly the silliest film in the entire franchise. But here's the thing, Hellraiser Bloodlines is set in 18th century France and deep space. It's the last sequel to come out in theatres, and the rest all go straight to DVD from here. It's the last sequel of Hellraiser released in the 20th century rather than the 21st. And, so what even is Hellraiser Bloodlines then? Well, it's a start to the franchise and a sort of prequel. It's a bit of a sequel. It's a bit of an ending to the franchise too, because it's the definitive end of Pinhead and how the Cenobites are defeated once and for all, which nobody cares about because we don't go to that far in the future ever again. So we just sort of go back to being in the 21st century and people in the modern day being stabbed and hurting. Why would you watch Hellraiser Bloodlines? Well, here's the thing. If you've watched the Hellraiser franchise up to the fourth film, or even if you finish the third film, you're clearly here for the blood and gore by this point. The first film has a man pulled to pieces by hooks while he says, "Jesus wept," and what have you. The second film has a woman tear her former lover's heart from his chest while cackling madly. The third film has Pinhead force-feeding a priest a piece of his flesh in a sort of twisted perversion of the body and blood of Christ. People are very clearly here for the shock, the gore, the horror, and the perversion of traditional Christian iconography. And, you know, that whole thing from the first two films about Kirsty Cotton escaping the Cenobites and the tragedy of her family, that wasn't important. She's only in the third film for flashbacks to explain to you what the Cenobites are and how scary they are. And the rest of the franchise is people coming back for Doug Bradley and his backup dancers. And the rest of the franchise is very much more Hellraiser, in the sense of you just want more of that. So indulge freely. There is a reason that most Hellraiser boxed sets are made to look like that whole spooky puzzle box at the heart of the franchise that people open so that the Cenobites can come take them away to a world of gore and horror. And, yeah. So Hellraiser Bloodlines is, of course, a prequel and a sequel. 3 stories told of the bloodline of one Philippe Le Marchand, the man who created the spooky box that summons the Cenobites. The first story is us seeing the box created by Philip from blueprints that were supplied to him by an evil French diabolist, and the box is meant to serve as a portal to hell, and with the help of this box, this evil perverted Frenchman is able to open the box and summon Angelique, the demon princess of hell. Yes, that is actually her name. Angelique, the demon princess of hell. She is the daughter of Leviathan, who is a big scary diamond that only appears in the second Hellraiser film, and Angelique herself only appears in the fourth Hellraiser film. So it's sort of like a like father, like daughter thing, really, where these characters that expand the mythology of the series don't really matter that much. Now, she is summoned into the flayed skin of a prostitute, and she is horrified to find that she is now bound into the service of a human magician, this evil Frenchman's apprentice, who has her kill the Frenchman, kill the rest of his servants, turn them into sort of like 18th century versions of the Cenobites, but that's only in a deleted scene, I think. And she longs to return home to hell, and there's this horrible relationship between her and her new master, and it's explicitly a sexual one that continues the long-standing Hellraiser tradition of really unfortunate implications. And the man that built the box, that saw all this horror going on, realizes that he has just built a portal to hell and decides to dedicate his life and the life of all of his children to making their children feel really, really guilty for what he did, so that they can go and fix the box instead. And for the rest of time, the Le Marchand family must work to undo the evil they created, and presumably a load of people then copied, because we see about a dozen of the boxes in Hellraiser 2, and I don't think Philip or any of his family were going to go back and build more of these things after regretting it the first time. Now, we fast forward a few hundred years after this bit in French. Well, in France, it's actually in English because everybody speaks English when they're in France. And we fast forward a few hundred years to the modern day, and Angelique is still alive and still an unwilling slave to the same master until she finally gets this loophole in the contract or whatever that she can use to break free from the years of abuse and degradation under the evil magician. And she kills him, and she begins to chase down the spooky puzzle box, which has been lost for hundreds of years now because all she wants is a way home, back to hell and back to the world she came from. And when she finally finds the box, Pinhead steps out, because hell isn't the world she left anymore. She's been gone for too long, and now there isn't a home waiting for her anymore, just a bunch of leather-clad demons with piercings that are going on and on about the sweet suffering. Just these weird leather-clad people. It'd be like if you stepped home and you found your mom and dad wearing, like, fetish gear or what have you. It's really unfortunate for her, because all she wants to do is get back, and she helps Pinhead try and do something about this skyscraper that's been made by Philippe Le Marchand's kid or whatever, and this big, like, spooky super puzzle box that he's made. But in the end, she is banished back to hell and finds herself in another, even worse kind of servitude. And when we get to the future, she ends up coming out of the box with the rest of the Cenobites, and she's just another Cenobite. She's in a skimpy leather costume, she's got scars, she's got cuts, she has a broken and sort of distant expression. It's really honestly kind of sad, and she only gets a sort of freedom as the space station she's on is filled with holy light, destroying her. The last part of this film is set on a space station, because, of course, most horror franchises have not finished until they have gone to space. And, yeah, it's a giant space station that is also a giant puzzle box built by another member of the Le Marchand family who goes, "I have finally defeated the Cenobites. Now I am free of the guilt that everybody keeps telling me I should feel guilty about," instead of, like, his father solving his sins himself, or the family really having any of their own independence. Really, thematically, this film is supposed to be about this sort of ancestral guilt, where you're responsible for your parents' mistakes. But a lot more of the film ends up showcasing this one woman who is forced into slavery at every turn, abused by the men who have power over her. And yeah, this Hellraiser is weird and different from the others. Like, it starts a weird trend of the middle three Hellraiser sequels, where we're following a male protagonist instead of a female one, and that is a bit weird and definitely changes the tone the franchise has, because the first three have a sort of, like, damsel in distress threatened by the explicit sexual evil, whereas the middle three are a corrupt dude who is, of course, totally deserving of whatever fate he gets. And contextually then, the Cenobites stop becoming the sin and temptation that the protagonists avoid and become this evil and sin that they've already committed and sinned. Yeah, Bloodlines has a bit of a happy ending. The last member of the family is free, destroys the Cenobites, etc. But it's also a sad ending where the demon princess of hell is trapped in a lifestyle that degrades and destroys her bit by bit, and ultimately dies looking almost completely unrecognizable to both us and herself. And for a film series wrapped up in BDSM imagery, the Hellraiser franchise really likes to make it out to be the most evil and self-destructive thing possible, even if it exposes all these new people who've seen the films to, like, oh my god, Pinhead is so cool, oh my god, all these piercings are so cool, oh my god, is that something I can actually get? And I don't know if that's the funniest thing I think about, really, where it's demonized it, but at the same time it's very much popularized it. And that's Hellraiser for you, really. People come to watch the gore and the spectacle, and a lot of the films and what they say doesn't matter so much as we see Pinhead.